Hi everyone, and welcome to this next video for the do-it-yourself perfect pillow box. Now we are going to look at how to make the actual pillowcase. So there's different sizes of pillowcases and pillows. There's either the small or the regular size. And for any size, any fabric, you'll usually have a right side of the fabric and a wrong side of the fabric. Now sometimes you can't really tell, but usually you can see one side of the fabric is much nicer than the other side. So I see this one's kind of more fuzzy. This one is nicer and better defined. So that's going to be my right side. And when I'm sewing, I usually want to have right side against right side because I'm going to end up flipping whatever I'm sewing. So this is the case with the pillowcase. Now you want to make sure that you are folding it in the right direction. So take a look. It'll be quite obvious if you're folding it in the wrong direction, but you want to look kind of like the shape of your pillow, only longer. Now I'm going to sew the regular size pillowcase here. So I'm looking here and I'm identifying right now it is right sides together. So I'm going to open it up, and so I'm going to again identify one of the narrow sides, and I'm going to want to leave that side completely open this time. I'm going to sew along the long side and along this shorter side opposite to the one I'm leaving open, and then the fourth side is a fold. So I need to sew these two sides. Now, if you're sewing by hand, you kind of have the choice. You can either use, and preferably use this back stitch. You can make it looser than when you did the actual pillow. You could even use a running stitch, but I do recommend the back stitch. I think it would be better for the pillowcase, but this is a faster way of doing it. And the great thing with this fabric in particular is that it's checkered, so it's super easy to sew in a straight line. You just want to follow one of those lines there, sew along it, and you'll have a straight line. So I'm going to go ahead and sew those two edges that we were talking about. And of course, you want to be using your thread that's from your kit, and you want to have filled a bobbin if you're using a sewing machine. So I would refer you to your sewing machine instructions on how to do that and how to thread your machine. So again, we want a back stitch right here. And we want to aim to have about 1/2 inch seam allowance. So needle down, foot up and turn, and the foot back down. Now, of course, to make your life easier, you can use those pins in the same way that we were using them on the pillow to hold your two pieces of fabric together. If you're more experienced, you can just go ahead and keep your edges lined up and sew. But if you're less experienced, you definitely want those pins, or if you're sewing by hand, you definitely want those pins. Now with this fleece, as we were discussing, you do not need to finish this edge, even though your pillowcase will, have a nice border here, but it'll remain open. So in the wash, this will be exposed to the washing machine. In the case of fleece, you don't have to finish it, but if you have anything else that has an edge that would tend to fray, then you have to do an overlock or serging stitch, or that whip stitch or blanket stitch that we showed you that you can do by hand. So either this whip stitch or this more professional looking blanket stitch. If you're using any other fabric but the fleece, you'll probably have to do one of those. Okay, so your pillowcase was designed to have a little nice border here. Now, I'm going to take my ruler. It's supposed to be about 3 inches. So I'm going to measure here, and 3 inches is right here. So I'm going to line up these seams, and I'm going to put a pin right there. This works in the case of fleece. I'll show you a different way for another fabric. Now again, we have this checkered pattern. So it's super easy to do a straight edge, but otherwise you just want to keep on measuring. Make sure you have your 3 inches all the way around. So I'm just going to put a few more pins in. Okay, and I will show you if you have another fabric, such as this fabric that's available in the Christmas 22 selection. Now, of course, you want to sew around like we just saw, but for that edge, you want to do it a little bit differently. So you still have a 3-inch right here. Okay, so I'm going to pin it here. And over here. But you see that I have this raw edge here. Now there's 2 ways of doing it. If you do have a serger or a zigzag stitch on your regular sewing machine, you can finish it with that. If you do not, I'd recommend taking this fabric and you're going to fold it under this way. And just pin it in place here. Okay, fold it under and pin it in place. And over here, fold it under and pin it in place. And you want to do that all the way around your pillowcase. And that's going to give you a nice clean edge that won't fray in the wash. So I'm back with my fleece here, and basically now if you are sewing by hand, you'll be happy because this is where you can just do a running stitch, and that works great in this case because it looks good from both sides. So this is a perfect place to do that running stitch. And of course you can do it by machine, which we're going to do. So I often like to start sewing where the seam is. Now this is just a little practical technicality, but the seam here, I can push all the fabric to one side, but what's even better is to open this up like this, because that will not be as bulky. Then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine here. And yes, I like to start right where the seam is, a little bit before or a little bit after, because I want those seams to line up or my pillowcase will look crooked when I flip it. So again, you can follow one of those lines on the checkered fabric, or you can draw yourself a line on the inside of the pillowcase chalk is the best way, but you can also use a pale water-soluble marker or a pale pen to draw yourself a line if you're afraid of being crooked. So I'm just gonna start going here. So you can kind of place your fabric and prepare it before you actually put it through. Okay, so I'm coming up to where I started here. I really want to line this up with the needle and with this groove here in my sewing machine foot, so that looks really professional from the other side. And I'm being told here I ran out of my bottom thread. And I think my bobbin just needs a little fixing here. Oh, it's actually changed to another color. Well, don't do this at home, but I'm just going to use this pink to finish up my pillowcase here. So yeah, you want to make sure in the beginning when you fill that bobbin that's nice and full so that this doesn't happen to you. Okay, so I'm just going to start an inch or so before where my thread quit on me. Line it up. And again, right here, I want to be well lined up. And then you're going to take all of your pins out and you're going to flip your pillowcase and give it a nice iron, especially along the seams here. And you should have a nice finished pillow and pillowcase. So, and if you have any threads left, you really want to cut them. This is such nice material. You'll be very cozy on those cold winter days when you don't want to jump into a cold bed. Now with this one, I can just use my finger to get into the corners here. And voila, finished pillowcase.